She was 18 and had been blind from birth. Belvedere was much older, probably 50, although he was deliberately vague about his precise age. He and his late sister, the sadly missed Trippets, had adopted the girl when she was only a few weeks old and lavished on her all the love and devotion that even real parents would have found difficult to match. Since the death of his sister a year previously, Belvedere had managed to keep the home going more or less normally. He ironed the clothes and cooked the meals, cleaned the house and fed the cat. His adopted daughter, Claire, was not allowed to help with any of the heavy duties, for in addition to her blindness, the poor child was, well, different. Belvedere watched her grow through infancy and adolescence, and now she was on the threshold of womanhood. She was a cheerful, intelligent girl, and spent hours with her touched tapestry, a present from Belvedere, and her rather grand Italian mouth organ. The house in which they lived was perched on a cliffside, overlooking one of Cornwall's most isolated beaches. Even in the summer, a raw wind cut into the bay, whipping the sea into a cream on the blue-grey rocks that guarded the beach like a low row of broken fangs. Belvedere was a marine biologist and worked largely at home, the beach providing raw material for his research and his scholarly articles, which were published in dozens of scientific journals throughout the world. Claire never left the house, except with Belvedere, and then, early in the morning, for a brief constitutional along the rocky beach. If ever Belvedere were required to travel, a thing he hated, he locked Claire in her own room, which had every comfort, of course, including a bath, and there she remained until his return. After one such trip, Belvedere arrived home to discover Claire in a great state of excitement. She was pounding on her bedroom door and calling his name loudly. Belvedere hurried upstairs and unlocked the door, fearful lest she had injured herself or fallen ill. To his surprise, however, she almost knocked him flat with an exuberant hug. "What is it, child?" he gasped, unwinding her arms from his neck. "It happened. It actually happened," she cried. "Only for a moment, but oh, I'm so happy." With that, the girl collapsed, weeping at his feet. Belvedere helped her to a chair and waited for the sobs to subside. "Now, Claire," he said softly, "tell me what happened, and speak slowly, so that I can understand." The girl took a deep breath, as if gathering herself for a supreme effort. "This morning," she whispered, "while I was working on my tapestry, I actually saw my hands. I saw them. So strange, so strange." Her voice trailed off, and she began weeping again. Belvedere's heart missed a beat. Sight, after 18 years' blindness, an incredible phenomenon. "Now listen to me, Claire," he said kindly. "It may well be a miracle, but we mustn't hope for too much. It could well be a temporary thing, or nothing at all. It would be cruel to pin your hopes." "But I saw," she said, interrupting him. "I tell you, I saw." Belvedere patted her arm. "Yes, child, I believe you, but we must be calm and patient. You're tired now. I suggest you try to sleep. I'll have Dr. Morgan examine you in the morning." The girl protested lamely, but Belvedere was adamant. A hot cup of tea, a biscuit, and then to sleep. That was all he was going to allow for this evening. Later, when Claire was indeed asleep, he telephoned the doctor and told him of her experience. The old doctor was full of excitement, and Belvedere had difficulty in persuading him to wait until morning before making his examination. At last he relented when Belvedere explained that the girl had taken a sleeping tablet and shouldn't be disturbed. For Belvedere, however, sleep was impossible. He paced the rooms of the huge mansion, smoking cigars and fortifying himself with endless cups of coffee. As dawn broke over the deserted beach, he showered and shaved with meticulous care and changed into a monogrammed silk shirt. Then he perfumed and combed his hair, taking great pains to disguise the greying strands which grew at his temples. If Claire was to see him for the first time, the very least he could do was to make himself presentable. Dr. Morgan's black Austin scrunched into the gravel drive at 9 o'clock precisely. Claire, whose momentary vision had not returned, was sulking in the library with the Braille edition of Wuthering Heights. Belvedere admitted the doctor courteously, looking up at the figure that towered so tall above him. Dr. Morgan, thin and gangling, politely refused coffee and insisted that he examine Claire immediately. After an hour, he had shone torches into the girl's eyes, raised her lids with a soft probe, made her roll her eyeballs from side to side, subjected her to a torrent of slippery, faintly astringent drops. "I have no wish to raise your hopes falsely," he pronounced, replacing his instruments carefully in their case, "but I do detect a real improvement. There is considerable mobility in the pupil and a great deal of nerve activity. Of course, she must see an eye specialist as soon as it can be arranged. This will mean travelling to London." Belvedere touched the doctor's arm. "No," he said firmly. "If Claire needs a specialist, he must come here. I will not permit it otherwise." Dr. Morgan opened his mouth to protest, but thought better of it when he observed the determined set of Belvedere's face. Later, when Claire was in the library again, Dr. Morgan took a glass of sherry with Belvedere. "If her sight is to be restored," said the doctor cautiously, "I imagine you will have to explain certain things, certain delicate things to Claire, if you follow me." Belvedere lit his Havana cigar with a flourish and blew a plume of smoke in the air. "I am aware of my duty, doctor," he said firmly. "I shall not shrink it. She will be told." Dr. Morgan toyed with his glass, and Belvedere recharged it. "I have plans for Claire, doctor," he continued. "Long-term plans." "Oh?" said the doctor, his curiosity aroused. "Yes," said Belvedere. "I intend to marry her." Dr. Morgan almost dropped his glass, and his face took on a crumpled, lugubrious expression. "But, my dear Belvedere, forgive me speaking frankly, but marriage? Well, I mean, how can you? The girl's your adopted child." "Then it's perfectly legal," snapped Belvedere. "It's not incest, you know, when there are no ties of blood." "I'm sorry. It was churlish of me to comment in the way I did. Please forgive me. You have, of course, given Claire a lifetime of devotion. I'm sure what you propose is for the best." "But, of course," said Belvedere, mollified. "No offence given, no offence taken. More sherry?" Dr. Morgan declined, and was shown cordially off the premises, Belvedere eliciting from him a promise that any eye specialist would come to them, and not vice versa. In the days that followed, Claire found her vision recurring in short, irregular spasms, a succession of faint images, planes of light, and fleeting liquid objects. Belvedere decided to delay contacting Dr. Morgan, making excuses to Claire about the old man's busy schedule. After 2 weeks, events came to a head. It was late evening, and the moon had vanished behind a layer of brooding cloud. Claire was playing her mouth organ in the library, while Belvedere completed his work on a biological thesis for an American magazine. Suddenly, he heard the girl cry out. It was a cry of joy, an eruption of ecstatic excitement. As he hurried across the great hall to the library, her cries became louder. "I can see," she was shouting. "I can see everything." Belvedere sprang into the library, and she looked straight at him, her eyes brimming with tears. "Claire," he said softly. She rushed to him and flung her arms around him, her body trembling. He led her gently to the sofa, and they sat down. Belvedere was weeping too. He took her hand in his and held it gently. "It is a miracle," he said. "We must pray to God and thank him for this miracle, Claire. But first, I must explain. It cannot wait. Now you can see everything. You must also know." "Know what?" said Claire, her mind a vivid theatre of sensation. Her eyes swept greedily over every object in the room, and then back to Belvedere. Her joy was beyond description. "Look at your hands, Claire," said Belvedere quietly. "Look at them." She did as he asked, not comprehending the reason. "I must tell you, Claire," he continued, "that you are not as others are. You are different. See how your hands compare with mine. See how different they are. And come, child, look at your reflection in the mirror, standing next to mine." He helped her gently to her feet, and they gazed into the big carved mirror that hung on the library wall. Claire's hand shot up to cover her face when she saw its image. Belvedere embraced her gently. "So, my child, you understand. You see the difference. You know now why I can never let you leave this house. Never let you be tortured by the mocking gaze of normal people. I will protect you, always, forever. You will be my wife, Claire. I shall never let anything harm you, ever. Now come, child, don't despair. You can see the house. You can see the cliffs, the sea. You can make your new world here, safely with me." The girl clung to him fiercely. "Oh, thank you," she sobbed. "Don't let anyone else see me, please, please." There, said Belvedere. "Nobody will, not even old Dr. Morgan again. Come on, my little Claire. Let's walk on to the beach. It's empty now, and you'll be able to see the waves and the rocks and the sand." Holding her gently, he led her towards the French windows, and she clung to him, happy again, secure in his love, yet ashamed of how different she was. Belvedere was happy too. He had already decided to lie to Dr. Morgan and tell him that Claire's sight had not returned, and that his services would no longer be required. As for the wedding, well, Belvedere would conduct the service himself, and there would just be the two of them, he and Claire. On the left of the beach, just above the house, was a jagged promontory of rock, the haunt of gulls and other sea-birds. As Belvedere led Claire down the stone steps to the bay, he failed to observe the small figure watching them from the crag. It was a boy, no more than 16, risking his neck for a gul's egg, which he hoped he could locate in one of the rocky crevices. As the lad raised his head, he saw Belvedere and Claire directly below him, a curious and fascinating duo. The girl was exquisite, a honey blonde with the face of a goddess and a slender yet voluptuous figure. Perfect legs showed clearly through the flimsy fabric of her dress. She was clinging to the arm of a monster, a misshapen brute with a gargoyle's face and coarse mottled skin. His hands were hideously disfigured with warts and matted hair, and he dragged his bloated, dwarfish body on bowed and stunted legs. Strangely enough, the girl seemed happy, and as they stepped onto the beach, she stooped and kissed her dreadful companion on the lips.